In the quiet village of Oduko, the people lived by strong rules and deep faith. At the center of the village stood a small clay chapel with a wooden cross on top. This was where Father Mensi, the village priest, preached every morning and evening. His voice was powerful, and his eyes sharp like a hawk's. The people feared him, but they also respected him. To them, he was the voice of God. But behind those chapel walls, hidden from the world, lived his only daughter, Zinaria. Zinaria was a beautiful girl, soft-spoken and graceful. Her skin was dark like the soil after rain. Her eyes, large and gentle, carried sadness she could never speak. Her mother had died giving birth to her, and since then, Father Mensi had raised her alone. He told the village she was pure, untouched by the world's evil. She is to be an example, he would say, a living light of God's holiness. Because of this, she was not allowed to play with the other children. She didn't go to school. She didn't attend festivals. She stayed indoors, prayed, and obeyed. To the village, Zinaria was perfect. But inside, Zinaria felt like a prisoner. Every day, she watched the children run and laugh outside her window. She saw the girls braid each other's hair. She saw the boys chase goats and shout with joy. She longed to be part of that world, just for a moment. One day, while Father Mensi was away at the chapel, Zinaria did something bold. She stepped out of the house and walked to the back of the chapel, near the edge of the bush. Her heart pounded. She had never gone out alone before. Her steps were slow, unsure, but something in her heart pulled her forward. There, by the stream, she saw a young boy. He was carrying firewood on his head. When he saw her, he stopped. His eyes widened. Are you the priest's daughter?" he asked, surprised. Zinaria nodded slowly. "Yes. I'm Toby, son of Kemi the trader. I've seen you from far but never this close," he said, smiling. Zinaria didn't know what to say. She felt nervous, but also excited. Someone was speaking to her like a normal girl, not like a holy symbol. "Do you ever come out?" Toby asked. She shook her head. "My father doesn't allow it." Toby looked at her with gentle eyes. "That's not fair. There's more to life than staying locked away." Zinaria looked down, then back up. "What is it like, outside?" Toby smiled and pointed around. "It's loud, fun, sometimes crazy. But it's real. You can touch it. Feel it." Their talk lasted only a few minutes. She heard the bell of the chapel ringing and knew it was time to go. But that short moment stayed in her heart. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept hearing Toby's voice in her head. There's more to life than staying locked away. For the first time in her life, Zinaria started to wonder, what if he was right? From that day, her heart changed. Her eyes looked at the world differently. She was still the priest's daughter. But something new had started to grow inside her. And the walls her father built around her, they had begun to crack. Zinaria couldn't stop thinking about Toby. His voice echoed in her mind like the evening chapel bell. There's more to life than staying locked away. Those words danced with her dreams and followed her every step. Each time she sat beside her father during prayer, her mind drifted to the world outside. The laughter of children. The smell of roasted maize. The warm sun on her skin. The next evening, when her father went to visit an elder in the village, Zinaria stood at the doorway. The sky was soft and golden, the village glowing under sunset. Her heart beat fast. Her hands shook. But her feet moved. She stepped outside again, this time walking past the stream and deeper into the open. Everything felt new. The colors, the breeze, the voices in the distance. For the first time, she felt alive. Zinaria. She turned quickly. It was there, the palm wine tapper's son. He was tall and cheerful, with a wide smile and dirt on his hands. "You shouldn't be out here, should you?" he teased, his eyes curious but kind. Zinaria hesitated. "No. But I needed to see something else, to feel something different." Dea chuckled. "Well, the world is big, priest's daughter. There's more than walls and rules." They walked a little. Dea told her about his work, climbing tall trees, tapping wine, listening to birds. Zinaria listened with full attention. Every word was like a raindrop on dry earth. She returned home before dark, just as her father was finishing evening prayer. He didn't notice anything strange. Zinaria smiled softly. She had walked in the world, and returned. And she wanted to do it again. The next evening, she met Abuni, a quiet fisherman by the riverbank. His voice was soft like the water he walked in. He taught her how to spot fish hiding under stones and how to listen to frogs in the reeds. Zinaria laughed for the first time in a long time. The sound of her own joy surprised her. With each passing day, she met someone new. A young hunter with sharp eyes. A drummer who spoke in rhythms. Each man showed her something different about the world and about herself. But as her secret life grew, so did her guilt. She still knelt beside her father at prayer. Still listened to his sermons. Still wore the plain white clothes he gave her. But her heart was no longer still. It beat to a rhythm he could not hear. One morning, Father Mensi spoke about temptation in his sermon. He warned the youth to stay pure, to avoid daughters of sin who led good men astray. Zinaria's hands clenched in her lap. Did he know? That night, as she sat by the stream with Dea, she asked him, "Do you think it's wrong, what I'm doing?" Dea paused. "Wrong? Zinaria, you're just trying to breathe. To feel. You've been locked up like a spirit in a jar. What's wrong is pretending that's life." Zinaria looked up at the stars. "But my father, he wouldn't understand." "Maybe not," Dea said gently. "But do you understand yourself?" She stayed quiet. That was the question. The priest's daughter was no longer just a symbol. She was becoming Zinaria. A girl with her own thoughts, her own fire. And while her father prayed for her to stay untouched by the world was already touching her. The village of Oduko had ears. Ears that hid behind baskets of yams and behind the flapping cloth of market stalls. Ears that listened to footsteps in the dark, to voices by the river, to rustling skirts that shouldn't be out past sunset. And slowly, Zinaria's name began to travel. At first, it was soft, just whispers between two women pounding fufu near the well. "Did you see the girl by the stream last night? I swear it looked like the priest's daughter." "No, it couldn't be. She never comes out." But the next day, another whisper joined. "My brother said he saw her talking to Dea. They were laughing, and close." That night, in a hut near the river, Abuni's mother scolded him. "You're bringing shame into this house. Stay away from that girl. She is trouble waiting to happen." Abuni lowered his head but said nothing. He didn't regret knowing Zinaria. She had listened to him when no one else cared. Still, the whispers kept growing. And in a place like Oduko, whispers had sharp teeth. One morning, Mama Nambo, an old widow with wise eyes, stood beside her grinding stone and stared quietly across the village square. She watched Father Mensi walk past, chin high as always, robes flowing like river water. But Mama Nambo had lived long enough to know when things were about to break. "Men who build high walls forget that the sky can't be blocked," she muttered to herself. Inside the chapel, Father Mensi had started to feel it too. The looks. The strange silence after he walked past. The way people greeted him without meeting his eyes. He blamed it on envy. "They are jealous of my daughter's purity," he told himself. "They wish their own children were as holy." But Zinaria was changing, and even he could feel it. She was quieter now. More thoughtful. Her prayers were slower, less full of fire. She asked more questions. "Father," she said one evening, "do you think people can change their path and still be close to God?" Father Mensi frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked away. "Just, what if someone wants to learn the world, but still be good?" He stared at her long and hard. "The world is filled with temptation, Zinaria. It is better not to taste what may poison the soul." She nodded, but her eyes told another story. That night, she met there again under the mango tree near the chapel. He looked worried. "They are talking," he said. "Your name is everywhere now." Zinaria's stomach turned. "Do they know it's true? They don't need proof. In Oduko, gossip is truth once it spreads far enough." She bit her lip. "Should I stop?" Dare looked at her. "Only you can answer that. But once the village turns, they won't stop at whispers. They'll come for you." The moonlight painted her face with silver. She looked older, stronger. "I just wanted to feel like I was more than a lesson in white robes," she said. "And you are," Dare replied gently. "But now, they want to remind you of who they think you should be." Back in her room, Zinaria sat on her mat in the dark. Outside, the crickets sang. Inside, her heart pounded. The girl the village called Pure Heart stepped into the world. And now, the world was beginning to step back, with suspicion in its eyes. The air in Oduko had changed. It felt heavier now. Like a storm was hiding just behind the clouds. The laughter in the market didn't rise as high. The greetings between neighbors came slower, more cautious. Everyone was watching everyone. And the whispers, they had become louder than drumbeats. "She's ruined," someone hissed behind a woven fan. "She visits different boys every night," another said, stirring a pot of egusi like she was stirring the truth into the air. Zinaria's name was on every lip, dirty, bold, and full of fire. The girl who was once kept behind walls was now the center of a storm. But Zinaria stayed silent. She still walked to the river at night. She still listened to stories under the moonlight. Some nights she met there, other nights Abuni, or even Timo, the quiet one who always sat under the guava tree sketching birds with charcoal. She didn't seek passion. She sought freedom, the freedom to choose who to talk to smile, to ask questions no one ever answered when she sat behind the chapel. The boys didn't see her as the priest's daughter. They saw her as Zinaria, curious, kind, and beautiful. But not all of them were careful. One evening, Dare was at the village square sharpening his knife when his friend, Lomi, laughed loud. "So tell me, how does the priest's daughter taste?" he joked. Dare froze. Lomi's voice was loud. Two old women nearby paused. 3 boys at the water stand turned. "I'm serious." Lomi chuckled. "You and Abuni and even Timo, seems like she's tasting all the fruits in the basket." Dare stood up, his jaw tight. "Watch your mouth." "Why?" Lomi smirked. "Everyone's already talking. Why not give them something real?" Dare didn't answer. He left, but he could feel the stares burning into his back like hot pepper. By the next morning, the whispers became shouts in private homes. Women confronted their sons, their husbands, their brothers. "Were you with her? What did you do with that girl? Did she touch you?" Men who once smiled at Zinaria now looked away. Some felt guilt. Others felt shame. And a few, like Lomi, felt power. Because in Oduko, when a girl falls, people rarely ask what the boy did. They only ask how deep the girl sank. That evening, Mama Nambo knocked gently on the priest's door. Father Mensi opened it, surprised. "Mama Nambo," he greeted. "What brings you?" She looked at him with tired, wise eyes. I came to say this, listen closely. The walls are cracking, father. The village is not blind. He frowned. What do you mean? I mean the people are speaking. Your daughter, she is not who you believe her to be. His hands clenched. Lies. Mama Nambo placed a hand on his shoulder. Maybe. Maybe not. But sometimes, a father builds a cage thinking it's a castle. And the bird still finds a way out. She turned and walked away, her cane tapping like a warning drum. That night, Father Mency sat alone in the chapel. He lit a candle. He prayed with trembling lips. Was it true? Had Zinaria broken the path he carved so carefully? Outside, the village murmured. Inside, a father began to fear the truth. And Zinaria? She stood by the river, staring into her own reflection. She didn't know if she was still a girl or if she had already become a story. The chapel was silent. Only the candle on the altar flickered. Father Mency sat at the front, his back straight but his heart shaking. The whispers had grown into waves. Rumors now came with names. Zinaria's name. Connected to boys. To shame. To sin. He couldn't believe it. No, he wouldn't believe it. Not his daughter. Not the girl he raised in purity. In silence. In God's light. But that night, he decided to stay awake. To find out for himself. He waited in the dark. And as the moon rose above the chapel roof, the door creaked open. She entered quietly. Her white dress glowed faintly. She didn't see him in the shadows. Zinaria, his voice ran out like thunder. She froze. Her eyes darted to where he sat, slowly rising, eyes burning with questions. You have been leaving this house? He asked, low and firm. She swallowed hard. Yes. With who? She was silent. With how many? He shouted now, stepping closer. Tears welled in her eyes. They want what you think. Do not lie in God's house, he barked. The village talks. They speak your name like a curse. Boys whisper about your touch. Men laugh behind their wives' backs. Is this what you have become? Zinaria's hands clenched. And what have you made me, father? A prisoner. A statue. A holy puppet. He stopped. I protected you. No, she said, her voice rising, you hid me. You didn't raise a daughter. You built a symbol. And I just wanted to live. By defiling yourself, he snapped. By being human, she whispered. By laughing. Talking. Touching the world I was never allowed to see. He stared at her, stunned. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't begging. She was standing like someone who had found herself. Even if the cost was high. I taught you the path of righteousness, he said. And I thank you, she replied, tears falling freely now. But your path is not mine anymore. His jaw clenched. Then you are no longer my daughter. The word sliced deep. Zinaria staggered, as if slapped. But she didn't run. She took a deep breath. If exile is your love, I accept it, she said softly. But you can't unmake who I've become. She turned and walked out. And Father Mency remained there, alone in the house of God, no longer sure which of them had sinned more. That night, the village saw her leave. No suitcase. No shoes. Just a girl with a steady step and a broken heart. Some whispered shame. Others watched in silence. But a few, a very few, saw something else. A girl who walked into the world, not as the priest's daughter, but as herself. The road beyond Oduko was long and dusty, but Zinaria walked it with quiet strength. Her feet ached, her eyes burned, but her heart, though bruised, was free for the first time. She passed villages where no one knew her name. She slept under trees, ate fruits from strangers' baskets. And every night, she looked up at the stars and whispered, "I am still here." After many days, Zinaria reached a hillside village called Mano, where the air smelled of herbs and wildflowers, and the people walked with calm hearts. Here, she met an old woman named Mokido, a healer known across the hills for her magic hands and bitter teas. Zinaria collapsed near her hut one evening from hunger and heat. Mokido found her there, barely conscious. "Another broken one," she muttered, lifting Zinaria gently. "Let the land mend what the world has crushed." When Zinaria woke, she was on a mat covered with palm leaves. The smell of steaming roots filled the air. "Drink this," Mokido said, offering a god. Zinaria obeyed. For days, Mokido said little. She fed her, gave her ointments, let her rest. Then one morning, as Zinaria swept the compound out of gratitude, Mokido spoke. "You carry shame in your eyes, but not sin in your hands." Zinaria froze. Her grip tightened around the broom. "I was thrown out," she said. "For knowing myself, for touching freedom." Mokido nodded slowly. "Oh. Then you are exactly where you need to be." That day, Mokido took her to the bush. She showed her leaves that could calm a fever, bark that could stop bleeding, and seeds that made childbirth easier. Zinaria listened, watched, learned. She began crushing herbs with a heavy stone, mixing paste, boiling teas. She sat beside coughing children and women in labor. She wrapped wounds, whispered comfort. And in each task, she found pieces of herself. Word spread quickly. The girl with the priest come and the healer's fire. That's what they called her. Mothers came to her. Girls sat at her feet, asking how to be strong. Zinaria never told them about Oduko. Not the chapel, not the exile. But in her quiet eyes, they saw a story. And in her steady hands, they found healing. One evening, a pregnant girl named Nelly came to the hut, tears in her eyes. "My family wants to send me away. They say I'm unclean," she cried. Zinaria took her hand. "You are not unclean. You are carrying life." She helped Nelly through the birth, whispering courage between every scream. And when the baby finally cried, Zinaria wept too, not just for the child, but for herself. For the girl she had been. For the woman she was becoming. Later that night, Mokido sat beside her. "You've healed more than bodies, child," she said. "You've healed yourself." Zinaria looked at her, eyes soft with gratitude. "I thought I was ruined. That I had nothing left." Mokido smiled. "What they called ruin was just the start of your becoming." Zinaria closed her eyes. She was no longer a daughter locked behind chapel walls. No longer a name tossed in shameful whispers. She was a healer. A woman reborn. And for the first time, she felt whole. Years passed. The village of Oduko remained much the same on the outside, clay homes, morning bells from the chapel, old men telling stories under the mango tree. But something in the air had shifted. Whispers didn't fly as freely as before. Women's voices carried further. And the chapel, once filled with fear and discipline, now echoed softer sermons. Father Mensi had aged. His back was no longer straight. His voice, once full of fire, had become calm, almost weary. He still led prayers. Still taught the scriptures. But his words were different now. He no longer shouted about sin. He spoke about understanding, about forgiveness, and about seeing with both the eyes and the heart. And in every sermon, though he never said her name, the villagers knew who haunted his prayers. Zinaria. The girl who had been the village's brightest light, and its greatest scandal. But in truth, Zinaria had become something far greater. Far away in the hills of Mano, she had grown into a respected healer, known across villages for her calming presence, her steady hands, and her deep, quiet wisdom. She walked barefoot, wore simple cloth, and smiled with the kind of peace that only came after pain. She never returned to Oduko. Not for many years. But one night, sitting under the stars beside her herb garden, she felt something stir inside her. A tug. A whisper. It was time. The journey back to Oduko was quiet. Zinaria walked the old path slowly, remembering each tree, each stone, each bend in the road. Her heart beat like a drum as the village came into view. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. The children playing by the stream stared at her, curious. The older women at the market froze when they saw her familiar face wrapped in a new strength. "She's back," someone whispered. "No, it can't be." "It is." The priest's daughter. She walked through the village square, her head held high, her gaze gentle but unafraid. No shame. No anger. Only truth. When she reached the chapel, she paused. Then, slowly, she knocked on the door of the priest's home. It opened. And there he stood. Father Mensi. Time had weathered him. His beard had grayed. His eyes, once filled with fire, now held only water. He stared at her. She stared back. And for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he whispered, voice trembling, "Zinaria." Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. "Yes, Papa. It's me." He stepped aside, and she entered. The room was the same. Same mat. Same prayer beads. Same wooden table. But something in the air was different, like a wound that had stopped bleeding but never quite healed. They sat across from each other. He looked at her hands, at the tiny scars from herbs and healing work. "You've changed," he said. "So have you," she replied. He nodded slowly. "I was angry, not just at you. At myself. I thought I failed. That I lost everything." "I thought I lost everything too," she said softly. "But what we both lost, maybe we needed to lose it, to find something new." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in his life, saw not a symbol, not a trophy of purity, but a woman. Strong. Brave. And full of light. "I'm sorry, Zinaria," he said, his voice cracking. "For not listening. For choosing pride over love." She reached out and touched his hand. "I forgave you long ago, Papa." He closed his eyes. A tear slid down his cheek. He had spent years speaking of forgiveness, but he had never imagined receiving it from the one he had most. Word spread through the village like sunlight after a long storm. Zinaria was not a ghost after all. She was real. Present. And peaceful. At first, some people still whispered. But others came to her. Nani, a teenage girl, ran up one day, eyes bright. "You helped my cousin's birth in Mano. She says you saved her life." Zinaria smiled. "She saved her own life. I only helped her believe she could." Mothers began to send their daughters to sit with her. Girls who were told to be quiet now had questions. And Zinaria answered them with patience. She spoke of choices. Of consequences. Of courage. One afternoon, she spoke to a group of young girls beneath the old fig tree. "I was once like you," she said. "Afraid to step beyond the line drawn for me. But I learned this, when you silence a girl's heart, you don't protect her, you kill her slowly. But when you listen to her, when you teach her with love, she grows into something strong. And when she is strong, the whole village becomes better." The girls listened with wide eyes. Some of them smiled. Some of them cried. But all of them felt something shift. Father Mensi invited her to the chapel days later. This time, not to pray with him, but to teach beside him. He stood before the congregation, his voice full of humility. I once judged without seeing. I built walls where I should have built bridges. But God has given me a second chance to learn from my daughter. And as Zinariah stepped forward, standing beside him, the villagers stood as one. Not to curse. Not to scorn. But to honor. Because the girl who once brought shame had become the woman who brought healing. To herself. To her father. And to Itoko. Sparkle's epilogue. Zinariah stayed in the village for many moons. Not as the priest's daughter. Not as the girl who left in shame. But as a healer. A mentor. A symbol of truth and transformation. She walked the same paths where she once hid. Now with children following her, women thanking her, and elders nodding in quiet respect. And when people spoke her name, they no longer whispered. They spoke it loud. They spoke it with pride. Zinariah. The girl who broke free. The woman who came back whole. And the legend Itoko would never forget.